Ranadivé. Welcome to the Leadership Classroom, our very first guest here on the Leadership Classroom. So thank you so much. I think so much about learning about a person starts with how it all began. You grew up in Mumbai, India. Was there an educator or a teacher that you had growing up who left a lasting impression on your life and your development?
Well, first of all, thank you both for having me. It's a privilege and an honor. And teachers are doing God's work. They're teaching our kids. So there's nothing on this planet that's more important than that, because they make our future. So thank you for having me. It's funny when you get to be an old guy, you look back at your life and say, was there a moment that defined who you were? What was the defining moment? And for me, it happened when I was a little boy in Bombay, and I had a little transistor radio plastered to my ears. And I heard these magical words, one small step for man, a giant leap for mankind. I was listening to the Voice of America broadcasting Moon Landing live all the way to Bombay. And I was blown away. I thought, wow, who are these people that were able to take a couple men and put them in a box and send them 250,000 miles away to land on a rock flawlessly the first time. How incredible, how brilliant, how great, what an imagination. And I said I wanted to be one of them. So that's when I said, you know what, my studies, I got to commit myself to my studies. And somehow I'm going to get to America. So that was kind of the start of my journey. And I was very fortunate because I've always had great teachers. My favorite teacher was Mrs. Erickson. She was this Swedish lady who taught my fourth grade class. I think everyone's favorite teacher is fourth grade, but mine was, and she had these piercing blue eyes, and there were no bad questions in her class. And her eyes would twinkle when you would ask her a question. And so I had this insatiable appetite for just learning, and I was always asking questions. But I've been blessed in that I've always had good teachers, and I've had a family where education was really, really important. In fact, my grandmother, Tara Ranadivé, had instituted an award, the Ranadivé Award, and the kid who graduated first from high school would get the Ranadivé Award. And of course, every Ranadivé was expected to get that award. So the importance of education has been something that's been core to my life right from the get-go.
You talked about education. You talked about the transition from going to India to the United States. You attended MIT, where you earned both your bachelor's degree and master's degree in electrical engineering. You moved eventually into the tech industry. Your success in the tech industry is well documented. You founded Technicron Software Systems. You launched Tibco Software with funding from Cisco and from Reuters. Many California school administrators are working on raising money through school bonds, and you have companies and you've worked with companies that were willing to invest money into your concepts. Are there parallels that you see to raising money in the private industry and the public industry?
Yeah, so when you raise money, what you're doing is you're selling a dream. And all great salespeople and all leaders are great salespeople. And all great salespeople are really selling a dream. When my oldest son was a child, he was a few years, 6 years old, and he asked me what I did. And at that time, my company was automating trading floors. So I told him that I automate trading floors. And he said, what's a trading floor? And so I just wasn't getting through to him. So finally I said, Anil, what I do is I'm a dream merchant. I said dream. So I have these clients and they tell me what their dreams are. And I have these very, very smart people in Palo Alto, the best engineers in the world, and they can make those dreams come true. So all leaders, all people that are looking for investment, it's an emotional appeal. And so what you have to do is sell the dream. So absolutely, there are parallels. If you look at Jeff Bezos, you look at Elon Musk, you look at Steve Jobs, they were all dream merchants. And so the great leaders, whether they're in education or in government or in business, they're great dream merchants.
Vivek, you were co-owner and vice chairman of the Warriors back in 2010, but in 2012, everything changed when you made the move to purchase the Sacramento Kings. Ultimately, what led to the decision to go all in on this franchise?
Yeah, so I live in Silicon Valley. The Warriors was my team at the time.
Yeah.
We had been booed and had not had success. And then all of a sudden, when we bought the team, we had this guy called Steph Curry on the team. And he started blossoming. We started winning. And I got a call from our then commissioner, David Stern. And he said, look, you're the vice chairman. You should have your own team. You should be the chairman. Why don't you buy the Kings? Because I believe in small towns, and I believe Sacramento is a great sports town. And so you should save the team. And of course, my first reaction was, no, I live in the Bay Area. I'm a Warriors guy. Why would I do that? But then I saw the passion of the fans in Sacramento. It was like nothing I'd ever seen before. Social media was coming into its own. There was a whole revolution to save the team and keep the team in Sacramento. And at some point I thought to myself, I came to this country with nothing. When I came to California, I didn't have a penny. Everything I have, I owe to the great state of California. Sacramento is our state capital. And without the team, the city would really be decimated. It was the heart of the city. So I said, you know what, maybe I'm meant to do this. So that's when I jumped in and got into the bidding process. And of course, the rest is history. We bought the team. We invested, a huge amount into the downtown arena. And Sacramento is now our fastest growing city.
We could do an hour just on that time period
That's
of
right.
you buying that team and everything that went into it. I wonder though, because there were so many moving parts, what you learned about yourself as a leader during that time.
Yeah, so I've always believed that leadership is about values, it's about culture. And no matter what gets thrown at you, no matter how many obstacles you face, you stay on that path. I had instances during this journey where there were things being done that really were not right. I gathered the people that were part of helping me keep the team. And I said to them, look, we're going to do this the right way. We're going to stick to our values. We're going to stick to doing this in an honest way with highest integrity. And we're not going to play any dirty games or tricks. We're going to mean what we say. We're going to say what we mean. We're going to follow through. And we're going to win this. We're going to win it the right way. So it just reinforced my notion that leadership is about values. It's about culture. And things might happen. You might get a lot of obstacles on the path to where you tend to go. But your core values have to remain the same. And you can't deviate from those values. Win or lose, your values are your values.
And as a lifelong Kings fan, I thank you for taking ownership of this franchise. We often say that school leaders are CEOs of their schools, and in some cases, the largest employer in their community. I'm going to put you on the spot here. How would you describe yourself as a CEO and as a leader?
Yeah, so the job of the CEO is to really be the chief cheerleader, to be the visionary, to set the mission statement, to set the values. At the Kings, our mission is to build a winning franchise that enhances the lives of those it touches and makes the world a better place. So, and our values include the culture of exceptionalism, integrity, innovation, openness. So that's really the job of the CEO, is to set the direction, set the values, the culture. But beyond that, I call myself the chief irritant officer. So to make something of value, like if you look at a pearl, it starts with an empty shell and a grain of sand gets in the pearl. It's an irritant. And then the pearl forms around that grain of sand. So to make something of value, to make something of beauty, takes an irritant. Somebody who's always challenging, pushing you further, asking you questions. And so I'm a really good irritant. I can be really blunt and ask a lot of dumb questions, but all meant to move us forward. And, why not? Why not do this? Why not do that? Can we be better? So that's my style. I combine radical candor. You have to be honest. You can't. You have to be honest with each other. You have to be honest with yourself. So radical candor, but combine that with radical love. And so when people know that they can speak their mind, they can be honest, they can make mistakes, because there's radical love combined with radical candor.
One thing that stood out to me in doing research prior to this interview is you said that your superpower is surrounding yourself with people who are smarter than you are. So I have to wonder, how has that superpower made you a better leader?
Yeah, so that is indeed my superpower. Whether it was starting companies or the Kings or whatever I've done, I've been able to convince people that are way better than me, way smarter than me, to come and join me. Because at the end of the day, you are the organization that you surround yourself with. And even just looking at the Kings, we were the NBA team of the year. There's an award given to the best NBA team. And it's really the organization that we have. You look at the front office, we have an incredible coach, we have a great GM. Last year, we got every award. We got GM of the year, we got Coach of the year, we got G League GM of the year, we got Equipment Manager of the year, we got Training Staff of the year. So we didn't win the championship, we have to do that, but we got every other award. So I think in Silicon Valley, we have this saying that A players hire A players and B players hire C players. And so you always have to surround yourself with people that are smarter.
I want to just take you inside this piece in public education where we talk about the shoulder tap. An education leader identifies someone that they see with some type of leadership potential and then taps them on the shoulder and says, "Hey, this is something you should go for. This is something that you do." What specific attributes do you look for in a potential leader?
Yeah, so the model that I see for leadership in the future is actually not that different than on a sports team, where the world keeps changing. And so you want good athletes. And so you want more generalists who are really smart and can adapt to the changing world. What I've seen is I've been fortunate to have gotten to know, become friends with, interact with some of the most successful people in the world. And they've shared three traits that are common regardless of the industry or the area that they're involved with. One is an absolute obsession with what they're doing. It's a 24/7 obsession. The second is attention to detail. And the third is just a sense of urgency. I was friends with Steve Jobs, and he crushed it in every part of his business. He crushed it in the design of the product and the manufacturing, the distribution, the sales, the marketing, and the stores. He got an A+ in everything. So a lot of people say that, good leaders shouldn't necessarily micromanage. But I can tell you that, Steve or Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos, they actually did get into the details. They had an understanding of the business. They had an absolute obsession. They were really, the culture was a sense of urgency. So I look for people that are great athletes, that have resilience, that have the ability to really commit and be obsessed with success and with what they're doing. So those are some of the common attributes that I've seen.
I want to switch gears and talk about mental health a little bit, because I think oftentimes we don't do a good enough job of talking about mental health as a whole. And when you look at, especially in the world of education, so many
Yeah.
administrators, so many teachers are struggling with their own mental health. We're seeing, teacher shortages. We're seeing people leave the profession early.
Yeah.
I wonder, from your perspective, how do you, and I'll make this a two-part question, how do you support your own mental health, but then how do you also support the mental health of the people who work for you?
Yeah, so I've been very fortunate in that, I've not had struggles in that area. When I woke up this morning, I had the same two sentiments that I have every single morning. The first is extreme gratitude. I know that I live a very privileged life, and I have another 24 hours to have an impact. And that's the second emotion. What can I do today to positively impact the world or a person's life, or anything I can do that's going to move the world forward or even help an individual. And those are the emotions that I wake up with every single morning of my life. So I know that having gratitude having a purpose bigger than yourself, being able to help others, even if it's just to smile at the person in the coffee shop and yeah, and just light up their day. So I think, on the other hand, we all know now that this is a real issue, and we as leaders, as organizations, have to provide the resources to people dealing with those kinds of issues. I know in the past people would kind of brush it under the rug, but fortunately, we're now living at a time when even athletes can have mental health issues, and whenever something happens to athletes, then it kind of spreads to her recognition of the problem. Like if superstar athletes, who are like superhuman, can have these kinds of problems, then it can happen to anyone. So in some ways, I think our industry has helped people understand that these are real issues and they need real solutions. We need to acknowledge the problem. We need to provide resources, and we need to have empathy in helping people deal with it. So I think it's all of us, us as a society, have to understand this, and we have to be kind and have empathy and provide the resources for people who to deal with these issues.
We've heard from many leaders that we've spoken to about how they've learned their greatest lessons from their greatest mistakes. Is there a time that comes to mind where you made a mistake and you learned something that would help you get better?
Yeah, so I made so many mistakes that that the only thing is I don't think of them as mistakes. I think of them as learning experiences.
Sure. Yeah.
And I always like to say in my organization, I like to tell people make new mistakes and just don't make the same mistake again. And that's how I've always led. Like making mistakes is fine, but we have to learn from them. And so in the organizations that I lead, it's okay to make mistakes, but just learn and keep moving forward. So I think that's kind of like in the word mistake. I just don't like that word. Think of it as a learning experience, and what have you learned and what can we do better? And in some instances, you are where you are and you have to make the best of whatever has happened. So I think that in Eastern cultures, people more think of it as learning experiences and how you can evolve and how you can get better.
One thing that stands out to me about just the state of the world that we're in is that this idea of diversity, equity, and inclusion is under attack, certainly from more conservative parts of America, if you will. You have been very vocal, though, about social justice and addressing inequity. Can you speak to some of the work that you've done to make that a focal point for the teams that you lead, both the Kings and the River Cats?
Yeah, so we had this incident where a young man was shot, basically murdered in his own backyard, and it led to protests. And after that, I stood on Senate court and I said that, hey, we're not going to accept this. It just can't be business as usual. We all have to work together and do something to address this. And it's always been our mission that owning a team is a huge privilege. It's a huge honor, but it comes with responsibility. Like, how do you use this platform for good? And we've chosen to use it for good. And we're lucky that we're in the league that not only supports it, but amplifies it. So we've conducted all kinds of programs for the betterment of our community, for kids, STEM workshops, leagues, games. But we've actually done more than that. I spoke to a lot of the players, and they came to me and they said, hey, look, you guys, you're very generous. You donate money, you help out, you create programs, but you have access to power, which we don't have. So help us with that. So we discussed this with the NBA, and it was instrumental in creating what we call the Social Justice Coalition. And we got the support of the NBA. We hired a leader, and we got a who's who of owners to be on the board of the coalition. And we're actually impacting law, because their point of view was, look, you can talk to the president. You have access to the governor. You speak to the leaders and use that to bring equity to justice, for example. So one of the first initiatives we started working on is that if you get caught for cocaine versus crack cocaine, so you snort it as a rich person, you get one punishment, which is like a little tap. But if you get caught with crack cocaine, then that's a different punishment. So let's equalize those. Let's bring equal justice. It has bipartisan support, and we've been able to speak to the highest levels of government to get that kind of support. So we want to touch all the points where we can have an impact with equity, with social justice, with opportunity. And we at the Kings have been leading that effort.
Both Michael and I have children that are in youth sports. Many of the people here that are watching this probably know that I'm a coach, a soccer coach. Uh, we know from doing research that you coached youth sports, you coached youth basketball. Tell us about that experience in coaching youth sports and maybe how that impacted your leadership as you've grown through the tech world and into sports.
Yeah, so Malcolm Gladwell wrote a book about that called David and Goliath. And, I was a single dad. I had a 12-year-old daughter, Anjali, and I was trying to find ways to spend more time with her. So I foolishly volunteered to coach her basketball team. Now, understand that I grew up in Bombay where I played cricket and I played football or soccer, as we call it, and I never touched a basketball. So I show up at the court near my house, and there's many courts actually. And I look around the room and there's these ex-Division One, 7 foot tall, Stanford, Duke dads coaching the other teams. And then there's me. And I didn't know what a draft was. Of course, they had all the good girls and they gave me the girls that nobody else wanted. So I'm standing with the ball and looking at the girls and thinking, I did this to get close to Anjali, but it's going to backfire. But I didn't want to show it. So I looked very confidently. I held the ball. I looked at them. I said, girls, today we're going to run. And I made them run up and down the court for an hour, just relays and races. And then I said, you know what? I can't just keep making them run. I got to figure out the game. So I went and I studied the game, and I was a bit of a math nerd. So I came up with a math equation for the game. And in the next practice, I taught them the math equation, which they actually embraced. And we ended up winning every single game and taking the team to the national championship. So that was what ignited my love for basketball. What an amazing game. And it got me into eventually joining Joe Lacob to buy the Warriors. But it was interesting because before that, I had actually coached my boys in soccer, but I played soccer. And coaching boys and girls is very different. The boys you can actually shout at. In fact, you need to shout at because they don't listen to you otherwise. Girls, you get them in a circle and you talk to them softly and they listen to you. But it has to be a very different style of leadership. And so the same technique doesn't work for everyone. You have to know, what I look at it as is ultimately the old model of leadership was like a Sousa marching band where everybody marched robotically to the beat of a single drum. And the new model is more like conducting a jazz band where you empower everybody, you make them feel like they're doing their own thing. But your job is to bring it together as sheet music. And so it's really conducting a jazz band. And you do that with girls, and then you can do that with everyone because, you talk to them, you have empathy. And that's also why I believe that the next generation of great leaders will be women, because they are more used to conducting a jazz band where they listen, they get people's views, consensus, empathy. So it's more of a networked style of leadership than kind of a top-down, hierarchical, do what I tell you, militaristic, march to the beat of my drum. So I think it's really being a jazz band conductor. That's 21st century leadership.
It's a fantastic analogy, and you've been so kind to spend this time with us. I want to close with this, Vivek. Because this is the leadership classroom, what is a piece of advice that you would offer our listeners on how to be the best leaders?
Yeah, I think that just listen and have humility. And, the greatest belief that my parents, the greatest gift they gave me was just a belief in myself. And just show people that you believe in them. And, be curious, be willing to learn. And I think that people can pick that up and be authentic. Be yourself, speak with your inner voice, and people will follow you to the ends of the earth.
Great advice indeed. As you and I were talking about off camera, as a former sports anchor, I was just bursting at the seams to talk about the Kings and Mike Brown and De'Aaron Fox. We'll save that for another time.
Next
You have been
time.
so kind with your time. Vivek Ranadivé joining us here on the ACSA Leadership Classroom. Thanks so much for the time,
Thank you.
continued success, and we look forward to catching up down the road.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been a real treat. Thank you.